Hi, Jamie Cowen here to talk to you about back to the ballot box again in Israel. Wow, for the fifth time in 3 years, Israel is voting for a new government on November 1st. After several failed attempts at forming a government in the last election, March of 2021, a unity government of sorts was formed that included wildly disparate parties. Yair Lapid, the current prime minister, cobbled together parties ranging from an Arab Islamist party to left-wing parties to right-wing parties. According to the party's agreement, Naftali Bennett, the leader of the Jewish Home Party, which is a right-wing party, became the prime minister for the first 2 years, switching to Yair Lapid, the leader of Yesh Atid, a center party, for the next 2 years. However, as is always the case in Israeli politics, the government collapsed a year after its formation. According to the earlier agreement, Yair Lapid then became the caretaker prime minister, which he is right now. Israeli politics is extremely complex. Voters vote for parties and not for individual candidates. If a party garners 3.25% of the national vote, they receive 4 seats in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, out of a potential 120 seats. Approximately for every additional 35,000 votes, a party will receive an additional seat in the Knesset. There are currently 39 parties running for seats. The current Knesset includes 12 parties, with 8 of them in the current government. Because of the number of parties, no political party has ever garnered a majority of voters in Israel's history, thus leading to the necessity of forming a coalition of parties to govern the country. The leading issue over the past several elections is the continuation in power of former Prime Minister Benjamin, or Bibi, Netanyahu. Bibi was Prime Minister from 1996 to 1999, and then again from 2009 to 2021, becoming the longest-serving Prime Minister in Israel's history. During his final years in office, Bibi became the subject of several criminal investigations, leading to his indictment in 2019 of 4 separate charges, including breach of trust and bribery. His criminal trial began in May of 2020 and is still ongoing. Bibi's criminal indictments and other actions potentially undermining democracy in Israel led to the formation of blocks of parties whose primary interest was to prevent Bibi from continuing to serve as prime minister. Despite Bibi's issues, he remains the most popular politician in Israel. It's hard to believe, right? His party, Likud, currently leads in the polls, with predictions ranging from an election of 31 to 34 Knesset seats. However, to form a government, a coalition of 61 seats is required. At this point, Bibi is at the threshold of successfully forming a governing coalition. This is problematic for several reasons. Number one of the parties likely to join Bibi's coalition is Atzma Yehudi, meaning Jewish strength, led by Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. Both are considered radical right-wing leaders. Ben-Gvir is a disciple of former Rabbi Meir Kahane, who was banned from the Knesset in 1988 for the promotion of racist and violent policies. He was then assassinated in New York City in 1990. One of Kahane's other disciples, Yigal Amir, assassinated then Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin in November 1995, presumably over Rabin's support of the peace process with the Palestinians. Until recently, Ben-Gvir kept a photo of Yigal Amir, the assassin, in his office. This radical party is projected to win 12 to 14 seats in the election, meaning if it becomes part of the governing coalition, its leaders will require ministerial seats in the new government. Jewish-Arab relations in Israel have been strained over the past few years, including Jewish-Arab violence in several cities in mainstream Israel during the last outbreak of conflict with the Gaza Strip. With the inclusion of avowedly anti-Arab politicians in the government, racist policies likely will ensue, leading to more conflict within the country. Additionally, this party and other right-wing parties seek to pass legislation stripping the courts of jurisdiction over numerous matters. The courts have consistently protected democratic principles over the years. Number two, one of Bibi's clear goals in once again assuming the office of Prime Minister is to push legislation that exempts him from criminal prosecution. During the current Knesset term, there was a serious legislative attempt to bar a Prime Minister from serving more than 8 years, but it failed in the end. Whether or not Bibi is guilty of criminal offenses should be determined by a court of law weighing the evidence. If Bibi successfully pushes through some form of exemption for criminal behavior, even potentially eradicating public crimes from the criminal code, then anything goes for public officials. Interestingly, Bibi's predecessor and political opponent, Ehud Omer, was convicted and imprisoned for similar offenses. Number three, ultra-Orthodox religious parties will once again serve in a government that is led by Bibi Netanyahu. Israel is what I would term a democratic religious state. According to the quasi-constitution of Israel, democratic principles govern society. However, Israel is recognized as a Jewish state, and Jews generally are in a privileged status within the country. Judaism generally is a very broad-based faith, including various sects. However, in Israel, ultra-Orthodoxy rules the roost, so to speak, when it comes to religious affairs. This includes marriage and divorce. So, for example, there's no civil marriage in Israel, although the state will recognize marriages finalized in other countries. Consequently, large numbers of Israelis travel to other countries to get married. In fact, Cyprus has a whole industry devoted to conducting marriages for Israelis. The ultra-Orthodox also control regulations regarding the Sabbath day, including what stores, if any, can be open, and generally barring public transportation on that day. In addition, they ensure their young people are exempted from military service, which is required for all other Jewish Israelis. Finally, the ultra-Orthodox parties successfully divert funds from other needed programs to their religious schools, where only religious studies are taught. Their imposition of religious rules on society creates great tension in the country between them and the rest of society. The most likely outcome of the election is a stalemate, similar to the 3 elections conducted from 2019 to 2020. The party with the greatest likelihood of forming a coalition will be given the mandate to try and form a government over a 2-month period. At this point, that seems like Bibi and Likud. If he's successful, then a new government is formed. If he is not successful, then the mandate would be offered to Yair Lapid. Lapid's Yesh Atid party is projected to win 24 to 27 seats, making it easily the second largest party in the Knesset. But at this point, it does not seem that he has a viable way of forming a new government. Thus, new elections would be called again. This means the current government, led by Yair Lapid, would continue in power until another election is held and another government formed. Constant elections cause instability in the country. Ironically, the current government did a lot of good. It increased benefits for many on the margins of society. It oversaw a robust economy coming out of the COVID epidemic, and while inflation increased, it's not nearly as bad as in most Western countries, including the United States. Most importantly, the current government finalized an historic agreement with Lebanon over huge natural gas fields in the Mediterranean. In my view, this agreement is far more significant than the much heralded Abraham Accords finalized under Bibi Netanyahu. Lebanon is considered an enemy state with Israel, since it's the home of Hezbollah, the Iranian-funded terrorist group that constantly threatens Israel. Not only will the tapping and production of natural gas bring significant income to Israel and Lebanon, but it helps to sideline Hezbollah in Lebanese society. Of course, The one issue that maintains the albatross around Israel's neck is the Palestinian issue, that is, the Arabs living in the West Bank and Gaza. Conditions in these areas continue to deteriorate, likely leading to conflict again in the near future. Israel must forcefully address this issue. Prime Minister Lapid recently and publicly supported the two-state solution as an answer for the conflict. It's possible, if Lapid were able to cobble together a governing coalition, that some progress could be made on that front. Without progress, this issue is like a smoldering wick that at some point will burst into flames. Without a just resolution, despite all the good that Israel does in the world, it can never become a light to the nations, as the prophets of the Bible foretold. Please pray for a government of justice and integrity to arise in Israel. The election is on November 1st. Finally, I just want to say this at the end of this vlog, to mention again that I've published a book titled How Politics Has Distorted the Gospel. It's available in both print and digitally on Amazon and will be available in an audio version in the next week or so. Please consider reading it and then letting me know what you think. It would also be great if you could post something on social media about the book and do a review on Amazon. And with that, we will see you next time.